The day I decided to donate my body, I called my brother whom I hadn't spoken to in 7 years. He took a long time to answer, and I immediately stated my purpose. I cautiously added, "It's just a signature, it won't take much of your time." He cursed, saying, "You're insane," and hung up without another word. I could only travel 1,000 miles, carrying the documents to the city where he lived. It happened to be the busiest time for him. He signed without even glancing at me, not sparing me a single look, just impatiently adding, "One more thing, when you really die, don't notify me again." I nodded, "Okay." After finishing the last medical lab class, as I was carrying my teaching materials out of the building, I inexplicably tripped on flat ground. It seemed I had sprained my calf. On the short walk back to the office, a cold sweat broke out on my back. Remembering I had no classes scheduled for the afternoon, I decided to drive to the hospital. I briefly explained my condition to the doctor. It might be due to recent work stress, a bit of fatigue and catching a chill. Could you please prescribe some ointment for my sprain, and maybe some cold medicine as well? However, the doctor handed me a thick stack of examination forms and sternly insisted on a full-body checkup. By the time the results came out, it was already the next day. I stared at the long, complex medical term on the diagnosis sheet, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. After a long while, I looked back at the doctor. "I don't quite understand." The doctor, after confirming once more that I had no family members present, explained softly and carefully, in layman's terms, "It's ALS." As a medical teacher myself, I knew all too well what that term meant. "I just don't understand how such a rare disease could be connected to me." I took a 2-week leave and shut myself in at home, slowly digesting this devastating news that came out of nowhere. Until the last 2 days of my leave, I finally accepted the fact and made a decision. Since I am destined to die soon, then I wish to donate my remains to my alma mater, where I work, for medical research on ALS. The body donation form was filled out, with only the family signature section left blank. My hand gripping the pen slowly turned white at the knuckles. Now, the only family I have left is that one person, if I can still shamelessly call him family. Night gradually falls. The bedroom feels desolate. I take out my phone. After a long time, 7 years later, I dialed that number. "Can you help me sign a body donation form?" The call connected. I struggled to explain my intention, but there was no sound from the other end. Time passed second by second. In the silence where a pin drop could be heard, my heart rose to my throat. My palms grew damp, yet suddenly my eyes reddened. I thought I had numbly accepted this truth, yet at this very moment, in the silence on the other end of the phone, I felt sorrow and fear in the face of death. I forced myself to stay calm and spoke again. "Can you hear me? It's just signing a document. Don't worry, it won't take much of your time." Still no response. Thinking it's been 7 years since I last contacted that person, I can't help but wonder if this number might no longer be his. I cautiously ask again, "Are you, Lucas?" This time, a voice filled with disgust and impatience finally comes through. "You're insane." It was none other than Lucas. My throat suddenly tightened. Before I could say another word, the line had already gone dead with a beep. 7 years without contact. Now his hatred for me clearly hasn't diminished in the slightest, but without a family member's signature, the body donation form ultimately won't be easy to process. Thinking of what the doctor told me, ALS is such an unpredictable disease. Maybe a year or two, maybe just 10 days or half a month. The limbs and other organs of the body will gradually lose their functions. I cannot know on which day. I will start being unable to walk or grasp things. Even breathing will become difficult, and I will lose the ability to speak. Therefore, it's better to get things done sooner rather than later. I booked a flight for that same night and traveled a long distance to the city where Lucas currently lives, having lost contact with him for so many years. After landing in H City, it took me a great deal of effort to track down his whereabouts. By the time I rushed to that restaurant, it was already the next morning. I was stopped by the security guard at the entrance and barred from entering. Seeing my insistence on staying, the middle-aged man spoke coldly. "Today is the birthday celebration of the younger sister of LX Technology CEO, Mr. Lin. They've reserved this entire area. No outsiders are allowed in." I explained patiently. "I'm just here to see this Mr. Lin. I'm also his sister." Clearly, Lucas only has one biological sister, me, yet saying this made me feel incredibly guilty, to the point where I couldn't even lift my head for a moment. The middle-aged man naturally wouldn't believe me and immediately tried to shoo me away. Suddenly, the glass doors of the restaurant swung open on both sides. Not far inside, someone was walking toward us. The man let out a low, mocking laugh. "You sure have quite the nerve." My heart suddenly skipped a beat. Too many years had passed, yet that voice still made me feel guilty and uneasy instinctively. I suppressed the urge to flee in panic and forced myself to look up at the approaching figure. 7 years had gone by, and Lucas was no longer the 19-year-old boy he once was, the big boy who once pleaded tearfully over the phone, begging me to come home to see Mom one last time. Now, his eyes are cold and indifferent, his frame slightly thinner than before, making his sharp features even more pronounced. I opened my mouth, but my throat felt clogged with cotton, leaving me momentarily speechless, until a car pulled up outside, and Lucas walked straight past me toward the person stepping out of the vehicle. I snapped back to reality and hurriedly spoke. "Could you, please sign this? Just your signature is all I need." Chasing after him, I fumbled through my bag to pull out the document and a pen. Someone from the car called out to Lucas from a distance, "Bro, over here." She should be the star of today's birthday party, the daughter of Lucas's foster mother, but I didn't even have the courage to turn around and look at that person. Lucas's gaze went straight past me, landing on the person getting out of the car. The birthday celebration was grand, with many guests, and he was clearly busy, so when I blocked his way, his face quickly darkened with impatience. He reached out, snatched the pen from my hand, and without even looking, swiftly signed his name. The moment the pen touched the paper, as if fearing I might pester him again, his hand paused slightly. He added indifferently, "Add one more clause, don't notify me when you're really dead." Like a fishbone suddenly stuck in the throat, it took me a while to speak. Barely hearing my own voice, "Okay." Having received my answer, Lucas finally put pen to paper smoothly and finished signing his name. He still refused to even glance at me, only speaking indifferently again. "Can you get lost now?" Holding the signed document, my body instinctively stepped aside to make way for him. "Because of those few words," he said. My mind began to buzz faintly. On the way to City H, I thought about many possibilities, such as Lucas questioning whether this body donation document was fake, or questioning why I would sign something like this at such a young age, or perhaps, would he also ask if I was sick? But there was nothing at all, a signature that was crisp and decisive, yet brimming with impatience. It was clear he cared not the slightest about this document. I stood there for a long time. When I came to my senses, Lucas had already gone inside. The howling winter wind cut straight to the bone. My body was numb from the cold as I turned back toward the airport. I don't know how long I walked before suddenly remembering, I needed to take a taxi there. "It's too far from the airport, we can't walk there." My mind was in a complete daze, and I don't know how I made it back to N City. By the time I got home, it was already past 2 a.m. I turned on my computer and drafted a resignation letter, planning to visit the dean first thing in the morning to resign. The phone buzzed, and a message from Herman came through. "Dean Jim said you took half a month off. What's really going on with you? If you don't reply, I'll have no choice but to call the police." Only then did I realize that since yesterday evening, he had been calling me repeatedly and sending numerous messages. My phone was on silent, and I was in a daze, so I didn't notice at all. Herman went on a business trip to an out-of-town law firm at the beginning of the month and only returned yesterday. I quickly called back. They were worried and kept asking for details for a long time. I didn't dare mention my illness, just made up some random excuse and muddled through. On the other end, they were half convinced. "Xenia, if you're facing any difficulties, you must tell me." After hanging up, I held back my tears and stared blankly at the resignation letter. In the end, I reached out and tore the paper to shreds. I suddenly remembered that I still owe Herman some money, 50,000 yuan. No more, no less. He's struggling himself, so I should return it to him before I die. There's only a little over half a month left until the end of the school term. By the end of this semester, I should be able to receive an annual bonus of around 30,000 yuan. Additionally, at the end of this month, I'll be taking my students to participate in a national medical experiment competition, and the chances of winning an award are quite high, with next month's salary included. The total should be almost enough to repay Herman. I rubbed my slightly weak calves. More than half a month. I should be able to hold on, right? The next day, I went back to school for work as usual, but after finishing a morning lecture, I saw Lucas standing outside the classroom door. He was accompanied by the school administrators, frowning as he looked at me on the podium. "I don't understand what he means by this. And for a moment I even doubted whether my eyes were playing tricks on me. Just yesterday, he was still in H City, thousands of miles away. The school leader signaled for me to come over, and then Lucas asked me sarcastically, "Are you going to tell me this is a coincidence?" I didn't understand what he said, until he glanced into the classroom, and immediately a female student ran out, calling him brother. Only then did I realize that Lucas's foster mother's daughter, his new sister, was my student Lily. The world is always full of such coincidences. No wonder when I went to H City to find him yesterday, that woman's voice sounded somewhat familiar. I calmly explained, "I wasn't aware of this beforehand." Lucas clearly had no patience and directly cut me off. "You should resign." I froze for a moment, almost laughing in frustration. "On what grounds?" Lucas looked down at me with an air of arrogance, as if even a glance was a charity. "Because I don't trust you, neither your character nor your teaching ability. I refuse to place my sister under the care of someone like you. Someone like you." I struggled to suppress the dull ache in my chest, raising my eyes to meet his gaze directly. "I refuse." Lucas chuckled softly. "Then I can transfer Lily to another school, the experimental building donated to your esteemed institution, along with the related research equipment. Since the donation contract hasn't been signed yet, why not redirect it to a new institution?" The school leader immediately interjected anxiously, "Is there some misunderstanding between you and Teacher Lin? Perhaps we should sit down and discuss this properly." Lucas signaled Lily to return to the classroom, then turned to the school leader. "There's no need for discussion. I don't wish to speak with this Teacher Lin. Within 3 days, whether she leaves or not, just let me know the result." With that, he turned and walked away without hesitation. The school administrators looked puzzled, but they still spoke up to reassure me. "Teacher Lin, there's no need to worry. Our school won't dismiss any teacher without cause. If it really doesn't work out, the donation can be abandoned." That being said, withdrawing such a substantial donation would undoubtedly have a significant impact on the school. Watching Lucas walk away, I steeled myself and chased after him. My palm ached from clenching too tightly as I grabbed his arm and blocked his path again. The word, brother, that was on the tip of my tongue was forcibly changed due to reason. "Lucas, you can't do this." Lucas lowered his gaze to look at me, as if he had heard a joke. The corner of his lips curled into a sneer. "Why can't I?" I took a light breath, trying to calm my emotions before speaking. "We can talk things out properly. There's no need for this. Talk things out properly." Lucas burst into laughter. "Professor Lin, what kind of joke is that?" In the past, he would always gently call me Xenia, helpless, or perhaps indulgent and doting. Now, in the sarcastic tone of Professor Lin, there remains only endless mockery and disgust. Lucas raised his hand and brushed off the hand I had used to grab his arm. Then, with a frown, he forcefully patted the sleeve I had grabbed, as if trying to shake off something filthy and repulsive. Then he looked at me again and continued, "Because the father who cheated during the marriage has money, and insisted on choosing the father when the parents divorced, even though the father used his power to force the mother to leave with nothing. For a limited edition bracelet, she could abandon her mother and brother, a person who wouldn't even see their own mother on her deathbed, a person who hasn't returned home for 7 years. Who hasn't lit a single stick of incense for their mother." His voice faltered slightly, his eyes brimming with mockery that gradually gave way to a trembling, intense hatred. "Such a person, tell me, how exactly should one speak to her properly?" Like an invisible boulder, it bent my back. I couldn't lift my head, and after a long while, I only spoke very softly. "Many things are not as you think." Lucas's icy voice, laced with laughter, rang out above me once more. "Oh really? Why don't you pour out all your grievances and hardships? I'm all ears." I opened my mouth, but then remembered my illness. At this point, what good would revealing the truth do except make Lucas grieve more when I die? Perhaps it's better to just let him keep hating me. In Lucas's voice, there was a vengeful delight. "Finally decided to come see me, for a job that pays just a few thousand a month. You're willing to lower yourself to me. Isn't it just because David Lincoln is in prison? And your good days are over?" David Lincoln is the father of both me and Lucas. Due to financial crimes and multiple offenses combined, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. All his assets were auctioned off, yet they still couldn't cover the debts. I sighed softly and said, "Just assume that's the case." As he said, "When I'm truly dead, there's no need to inform him again. This way, it's actually quite good." I don't want to hear any more of his accusations and curses. Turning around, "I'm leaving this place." My wrist was abruptly grabbed by Lucas, who seemed somewhat angry. What's the matter? Can't even keep up your own lie. I forcefully pulled my hand back. The familiar sense of physical weakness washed over me again. After taking just one step back, my vision blurred. My steps became unsteady, and I suddenly collapsed to the ground. It's almost impossible for a healthy adult to suddenly fall like that. So my condition must have seemed utterly fake, as expected. Lucas looked down at me lying on the ground and scoffed coldly. It's been so many years, and the only skill you've improved is pretending to be sick and playing the victim. Perhaps he originally intended to say something more to me, but disgusted by my appearance, he completely lost any interest in speaking another word to me. He walked straight past me, light as a feather. The last words fell. You're just like that man. You deserve it. The final two words, as if ground between teeth, slowly escaped his lips. I watched him leave, never looking back, disappearing straight at the end of the stairs. I sat in place for a long time before mustering a bit of strength, barely managing to stand up and leave while leaning against the wall. I left my resignation letter and walked away from the school. As I exited the school gate, Herman's car was waiting outside. He had learned about my resignation and looked furious, indignant on my behalf. Why does Lucas treat you like this? As soon as Herman finished speaking, Lucas happened to walk out of the school. Before my father went to prison, Herman was his legal advisor and handled many lawsuits for him. Therefore, Lucas has always despised Herman to the extreme. As I passed by Herman, Lucas let out a scornful sneer. Herman was furious and shouted at Lucas's retreating figure. Do you know what Xenia has been through all these years? Lucas paused slightly in his steps. I lowered my voice, pleading, don't say any more. Herman gritted his teeth but ultimately didn't continue. Lucas didn't turn around. Without waiting for Herman to finish, after a very brief pause, he got in the car and left. I've been feeling increasingly exhausted and weak lately. I got into Herman's car and sat in the passenger seat, quickly becoming drowsy. I quit my job, and I'm not even sure if I'll still get the year-end bonus. Half asleep, I mumbled, I'll think of another way to pay you back. Herman seemed to reach out and touch my forehead. Sighing, you have a fever. What nonsense are you talking about again? In my days, it felt like I had returned to many years ago. Lucas also touched my forehead like this and asked me helplessly, Xenia has a fever. What nonsense are you talking about? The first time I found out my dad had someone else was when I was 10 years old. Winter had set in, and the temperature dropped. Mom picked up Lucas and me from school to go home. When we opened the door, I saw Dad on the sofa, with a strange woman. Mom was trembling and crying. Lucas reached out to cover my eyes and said to me, Xenia, be good, don't look. He took me upstairs. In the middle of the night, I went downstairs to get some water and passed by my parents' bedroom. Through the door, I heard Dad's cold voice. Then let's just get a divorce. What wealthy man doesn't do this? But Lucy has already given birth to my child. I have to consider her and our daughter. You'll have to leave with nothing. At the end of the long divorce proceedings, Mom accepted the condition of leaving with nothing in exchange for custody of me and Lucas. We moved from a villa spanning over 1,000 square meters to a rundown rental apartment of less than 50 square meters. During the day, Mom worked odd jobs, squeezing out time to repeatedly demand child support from Dad, pulling strings to find a lawyer in hopes of filing a lawsuit. She was very busy, so Lucas and I relied on each other for survival. Every day after school, Lucas would come to my classroom door to walk home with me. To save 2 yuan on bus fare, we had to walk for over half an hour in the twilight. I said my feet hurt. He crouched down in front of me, patted his back, and said with feigned ease, little brat, big brother will carry you. That night after carrying me home, his heart condition flared up again, leaving him writhing in pain on the sofa. Frantically, I fetched him water and medicine. When I opened the drawer under the coffee table, I discovered the bottle of his usual heart medication had long been empty. All that remained inside was a box of painkillers, switched to the cheapest kind, costing less than 1 yuan per pill. That night, Mom went to ask Dad for child support and didn't come home even late into the night. I called 120 using the landline, followed the ambulance, and took Lucas to the hospital. Then the next day, Lucas lay in the hospital bed and, as if performing a magic trick, pulled a bracelet from his pocket and handed it to me. He had been tormented by illness all night, his face pale, with dark circles under his eyes, yet she still managed to smile at me and say, Xenia, happy birthday. That bracelet cost over 2,000. Lucas, being underage, couldn't work to earn money, he secretly saved up his own medication money to buy the bracelet I wanted. The bracelet was carefully tucked into my hand by him. In response, I furrowed my brows and questioned him. Why isn't it the limited edition one? I told you that's the one I wanted. Lucas remained silent for a long time before speaking again. Later, when I can start earning money, I impatiently interrupted him. I want to go home, back to Dad. Lucas's lips twitched slightly as he struggled to raise his hand and touch my forehead. Xenia, are you running a fever? What nonsense are you talking? I abruptly pushed his hand away and stood up, my face filled with disgust. We stared at each other for a long time, silent, dead still, until, after who knows how long, I heard Lucas's voice, disappointed and defeated. You mean it? I returned to my father's place and resumed my privileged life. Meanwhile, Lucas and my mother continued to struggle. Lucas refused to visit me again. My soft-hearted mother tried to persuade him, saying, Xenia has never suffered hardships since childhood. She's still young and doesn't know better. Don't blame her. He only came to see me occasionally, and we became extremely distant. I transferred back to my old school, and there was no longer a brother by my side. Lucas performed very well academically and, due to financial difficulties, received funding from his school's principal. Every month, he received a sum of financial aid, and his mother's lives gradually improved. We just lived our separate lives like this, until the year I turned 16, when my mother, who had always been in poor health, was rushed into the emergency room and given a critical condition notice. That night, I was on a luxury cruise ship, celebrating my father's birthday. Amid the lively excitement of fireworks, I received a call from Lucas. That was the first time I heard him cry, helpless, grief-stricken, at a loss. His voice trembled so violently, I could barely make out his words. He said, Xenia, come back quickly. Mom, she wants to see you again. But I replied, Dad's birthday party isn't over yet. Maybe, it'll have to be tomorrow. The next day, when I went back, I didn't get to see my mother, only the death certificate issued by the hospital. Lucas looked at me and said just one sentence, Xenia, never let me see you again. That seemed to be the first time in my memory that he called me by my full name. I didn't get to see my mother's body, nor did I know where she was buried. 7 years after that, Lucas and I never contacted each other again. I jolted awake from my daze, my eyes brimming with tears. Outside the car window, it was already evening, and Herman's voice reached my ears. We're at your place. Perhaps noticing I hadn't moved, he leaned over and unbuckled my seatbelt for me. Then he froze in surprise. Why are you crying? Flustered, I hurriedly tried to raise my hand to wipe my eyes. I didn't know if it was because I was still half asleep or if my condition had worsened again. It took several attempts before I could barely lift my hand. I avoided his gaze, hastily explaining, maybe the wind outside was strong and got in my eyes. Herman mercilessly called me out. The car window wasn't open. I was momentarily speechless. He looked at me, probably thinking I was pitiful. His expression turned somewhat displeased. Your father is already in prison. Why are you still unwilling to tell Lucas the truth? After a long silence, I whispered, let it be. Herman's probing gaze fell directly on my face. Who was it that was in such a hurry back then? Who said that once David Lincoln was imprisoned, they would immediately go find Lucas to visit their mother's grave? I couldn't speak. Herman seemed to be drilling a hole through my face with his stare. Xenia, has something happened? I frantically pushed open the car door, almost fleeing in panic, and hurried back home. Herman's voice gradually faded behind me. Lucas's middle school principal contacted me yesterday. He said he couldn't get through to you on the phone and wanted to meet to talk. I pretended not to hear. Once home, I locked the door behind me. Just climbing a few flights of stairs had drained all my energy. I collapsed onto the sofa and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. When I woke up, the surroundings were deathly silent, and it was pitch black outside the window. I had no idea what day or time it was. Struggling to get up, I rummaged through the cabinets but only managed to find a pack of instant noodles. The bowl was ready. I grabbed the chopsticks, only to find I couldn't pick up the noodles. After nearly 20 years of skilled use, my chopsticks suddenly felt like utterly foreign objects. Despite my familiar motions, I watched helplessly as the noodles slipped off the chopsticks again and again. A sense of unease, a creeping dread, slowly coiled up my spine like a venomous snake. I tried switching to a fork and spoon, only to watch the noodles fall to the floor, while the broth from the spoon spilled across the table. It was like a horror story suddenly unfolding before my eyes. I stared blankly at my palm, my stiffening knuckles growing increasingly numb. As if gradually coated in a layer of ice, hunger even began to make me dizzy. I think, who should I ask for help? I should go to the hospital. I don't know if it's just a moment of panic or if it's really that serious, yet I couldn't even manage to open my phone's contact list with my hands. Only after many attempts did I finally press the emergency call shortcut. It took a while for the call to be answered, and in my dazed state, I suddenly realized belatedly. The emergency contact I had set was Lucas. There was a long silence on the other end, as if waiting for me to speak, until finally, impatience got the better of them, and a cold voice asked, "What do you want?" I was flustered and terrified, the desperate plea for help on the tip of my tongue. Only when I tasted the salty bitterness on my lips did I realize I had shed tears from sheer fear and helplessness. "Over there." Lucas's indifferent voice rang out again, "If there's nothing else." I'm hanging up. I lowered my gaze, staring at my own hands, attempting to flex my knuckles. They no longer obey my command. Trying to get up, I realize I can't seem to stand either. My thoughts suddenly become chaotic, and I recall the news I saw a few days ago. He was said to be a patient with ALS, completely paralyzed before death, unable to speak, breathe, or swallow. Tubes were inserted all over his body, causing unbearable suffering. In the end, his family couldn't bear it and removed his oxygen tube for him. Suddenly, I thought, what if I end up in that situation too? And if I begged Lucas to remove my oxygen tube? A burning pain suddenly seared through my breath. I couldn't even imagine such a scene. No, it's better not to let him know, not to let him see me in that state. Suppressing the tremors racking my body, I finally spoke. "It's nothing, wrong number." There was a long silence on the other end, followed by a cold chuckle. "As if it was expected. Good that you dialed the wrong number. Don't ever call me again." The call was hung up. The desolate living room instantly returned to a deathly silence. I sat there motionless, feeling like a puppet that couldn't move. In the latter half of the night, Herman called. He must have gotten the news from the hospital. Upon learning about my illness, he furiously demanded, "How could you hide something so important?" His voice trembled again as he spoke the final words. I waited quietly for him to vent his emotions before gently asking, "My arms and legs seem to be paralyzed. Could you please take me to the hospital?" And so I began my stay at the hospital. After some treatment, my hands and feet regained a little strength, but movement became difficult. Herman stayed here the whole time to take care of me. I was worried it would affect his work. After much persuasion and hiring another caregiver myself, I finally convinced him to return to the law firm. Before I knew it, deep winter had arrived, and the new year was just around the corner. My situation was getting worse by the day. After much thought, I decided it would be best to find a way to repay Herman the money I owed him while I could still manage to move around. I took half a day off from the hospital. I hired a caregiver to drive me to the mall's jewelry store, intending to sell the last valuable item I had left. That was the year I turned 16, and Lucas was 19 when he started working. He saved all the money he earned and gave it to me as a birthday gift. It was the limited edition bracelet I once questioned him about not giving me. He had always been hung up on that bracelet. Hoping it would bring me back to him and Mom, I took the bracelet to the gold shop and haggled with the manager. "I spent quite a bit on this when I bought it. Can't you offer a higher price for the buyback?" The manager looked impatient. "How old is this design anyway? That's already outdated. 30,000 is the highest buyback price we can offer. Because I've spent a lot on medical treatment and medicine, I really don't have much money left now." Thinking about the 50,000 I owe Herman, I had no choice but to brace myself and ask again, "Could you raise it a bit more?" "How about 35,000? Before I could finish, a cold male voice suddenly spoke up behind me. "Excuse me." I turned around and saw Lucas standing behind me with Lily. His gaze swept past me as if I were just air, looking directly at the manager behind me. "Is it here yet?" The manager immediately responded with a flattering smile. "The necklace just arrived this morning. I was about to contact you." Lucas headed to the counter to collect the necklace. But Lily's eyes fell on the bracelet in my hand, probably thinking that a teacher like me losing my job and ending up selling jewelry was truly pitiful. She tugged at Lucas's sleeve and spoke carefully. "Teacher Lucas, I think this bracelet is very beautiful. Could you sell it to me? The price? Let's go with the 35,000 you mentioned." I didn't want to embarrass myself too much in front of Lucas, but thinking about my physical condition, I might not be able to come next time. I nodded and was about to agree. Lucas frowned and said, "Lily, don't just take any dirty things that others have worn." Lily's expression turned awkward for a moment as she was led by the clerk to try on the necklace inside. I had no choice left and couldn't afford to care about losing face. I took $30,000 and sold my bracelet. Lucas stood nearby, watching me calmly and indifferently. That kind of gaze made me feel as if needles were pricking my back. I didn't dare to look at him. Took the money, and hurriedly left. After turning the corner, I made sure Lucas couldn't see me anymore. Only then did I lean against the wall and call Herman. I asked him when he would be free to come to the hospital, planning to give him the $30,000 first. If I transferred the money directly, he probably wouldn't accept it. After hanging up the phone, I saw Lucas standing in front of me. He looked unwell, his face almost livid as he stared at me. I forced myself to muster the strength to come to the mall, but now I feel completely drained, afraid he might notice something was off. I tried to walk past him, but suddenly he grabbed my arm. Lucas's angry voice rang in my ears. "Do you really enjoy giving Herman money that much? A dog that can send its own master to prison. Are you so sure it won't bite you too?" Almost everyone in the circle knows it was Herman, the legal counsel, who kicked my father when he was down, ensuring he got a life sentence. When I didn't respond, Lucas sneered coldly. "Or perhaps you're thinking of finding Herman to help your dear father, David Lincoln, appeal the case." In his eyes, I'm always this pathetic. My steps were unsteady, desperate to escape. I reached out to push his hand away. "Seems like it's none of your business." 7 years later, when we met again, Lucas was exceptionally cold and disgusted with me. At this moment, he's gripping my hand tightly, unwilling to let go no matter what. He sneered coldly. "It's none of my business, but anything that makes you unhappy always brings me joy. For example, did you know that lawyer Song got fired?" My heart suddenly skipped a beat, and my expression froze for a moment. I didn't have time to discern the truth in his words. I immediately took out my phone and called the law firm where Herman worked. Until I received the reply from the other end, lawyer Herman resigned at the beginning of the month. He took over a case from a company under LX. I made a mistake in a legal report, got reported by LX, and was fired. No wonder Herman took care of me in the hospital for so long without receiving a single work-related call. I was so angry that my vision darkened for a moment. When I nearly collapsed, I frantically braced myself against the nearby wall to barely steady my footing. My voice trembled with rage. "The grudge between us has nothing to do with Herman." Lucas's icy gaze fixed on me. "No relationship. All these years, how much dirty money has he helped David Lincoln make?" When the truth came out, he sent David Lincoln to prison. "Do you really think he has any good intentions toward you?" As he spoke, the disgust in his eyes grew even deeper. "A despicably cunning and selfishly greedy dog. Can't believe you're so eager to throw yourself at him. Didn't you feel disgusted being with him?" The words were too vile to bear. For a moment, I lost control and clenched my teeth. Raising my hand, as expected, the slap never landed on his face. Lucas effortlessly grabbed my wrist. His palm tightened with force, his face contorted nearly into a snarl from hatred. My vision blurred, the pain so intense it made me gasp for air. I heard him speak with disgust, his voice fading into the distance. "Do you even deserve this slap, Xenia?" A violent buzzing sound erupted in my head, and everything before my eyes spun wildly. Lucas was opening his mouth, as if still endlessly accusing me of something. Angrily, disgustedly, indifferently, I tried my best to calm myself down, but my body felt like a balloon with a hole, making even standing and breathing increasingly difficult. My throat let out labored gasps. My legs weakened as if a bone had been pulled out. I could no longer see clearly in front of me, nor could I stand any longer. I felt like my body was about to collapse the next second, and instinctively, I reached out and grabbed the front of Lucas's shirt. In my blurred vision, I saw Lucas freeze in surprise. The man's icy expression seemed to crack slightly, revealing a faint trace of astonishment and pity. He raised his hand, as if to steady me, until I suddenly heard an urgent voice behind me, seemingly Herman's. "Xenia." Lucas, who had just steadied me, instantly withdrew his hand, somewhat flustered and angry. His face reverted to its usual cold disdain. "Stop pretending. Stay away from me." My body felt like a towering stack of blocks, toppled over with just a gentle push. Crashing to the ground, I hit the floor, hearing a dull thud. The scent of blood seemed to spread through my nostrils. I couldn't tell if it was from the injuries from the fall, from coughing up blood, or if it was just a hallucination. In the final moments of consciousness, I saw Lucas crouching beside me in shock and panic. It was as if an invisible hand had suddenly torn away a mask from his face. That thick layer of heartbreaking coldness and resentment was gone. I seemed to see the teenage Lucas again. He gently and confusedly touched my forehead, asking me, "Xenia has a fever. What nonsense are you saying?" The scene shifts, and it's the person before me. The 26-year-old Lucas, flustered and at a loss, calls out to me, "Xenia. Xenia, what's wrong with you? I think I must be dreaming." When one is about to die, having sweet dreams or hallucinations is probably not unusual. In the hazy unreality, I saw Lucas looking utterly distressed, urgently calling my name over and over. He wanted to lift me up but seemed afraid of hurting me, fumbling anxiously to call for an ambulance. I can't see my own appearance, but I can imagine it must not look very good. Then Lily came running over in a panic from a distance, crouching down to grab my hand, her voice full of concern. "What happened, Teacher Lynn? How did this happen so suddenly?" Before she could grab my hand, Lucas pushed her to the ground. I saw the intense disgust and wariness on Lucas's face. Those were emotions that should have been directed at me, but now they were being vented on Lily. I heard Lucas yell angrily, "Get away, don't touch her, impossible." He was even afraid that Lily might suffer grievances by being my student, to the point of forcing me to resign. How could they treat her like this now? It was indeed a ridiculous dream of mine. My consciousness gradually faded completely. I remained unconscious for many days after this coma, in a dazed state. Scenes from many years ago resurfaced in my mind. In the dim and damp rented room, Lucas took the cheapest painkillers because of his heartache, shivering uncontrollably as he lay on the bed. I crouched beside him, tears streaming down my face. Gripping my hand with effort, he said, "Be good, Xenia, don't tell Mom, your brother will be fine." After resting a while, I stared at his deathly pale face, drenched in cold sweat. I even felt like he might die. I choked back a sob and whispered, "I'll go ask Dad for money. We'll get you hospitalized and the best medicine, so the pain will stop." Lucas clenched his jaw, his pallid face twisted with hatred. "I'd rather die than beg that bastard again, but I don't want my brother to die." The side effects of cheap painkillers, the agony of a heart attack left untreated, how deep that suffering runs. I see it most clearly every day when I look at Lucas. Lucas wouldn't go and beg, so I'll go instead. If Lucas refuses to spend that bastard's money, then never let him know where the money came from. I went back to my father's place, then took the money from secretly selling luxury brand dolls to find the principal of Lucas's school. That middle-aged teacher with graying sideburns agreed to my request. He began funding Lucas's living expenses, education, and medical bills, saying that Lucas should repay him tenfold once he reached adulthood. Those past memories kept resurfacing in my mind, and in my days, it felt as though they had just happened yesterday. By the time I woke up, nearly a week had passed. Lucas was dozing off by my bedside. My vision gradually cleared as I looked at his closed eyes, the dark circles beneath them. He was wearing a custom-tailored suit, likely wrinkled from not being taken off all night. I curled the corner of my mouth, feeling the sunlight streaming through the window envelop his face, making it appear exceptionally gentle. "Look, my brother, he's still alive and well. I've grown into who I am today, successful in my career and content in life. At least I didn't die in that shabby rented bed in my teens, just to prove a point." It suddenly occurred to me that I haven't called him the way I used to in so many years. Seeing he hadn't woken up, I couldn't resist quietly opening my mouth to try. The word "brother" on the tip of my tongue never made it out. As I suddenly met his open eyes, our gazes locked, an indescribable awkwardness hanging between us. In that instant, guilt overwhelmed me, and I hastily averted my eyes. Lucas also seemed slightly stunned, appearing somewhat uncomfortable as well. After a long while, he finally spoke softly. "What? Is there something on my face?" I didn't dare to look at him again. Somehow, I suddenly felt a bit sad too, for even now, I couldn't even call out to him. I tried hard to suppress the bitterness in my heart and replied, "It's nothing. It's just a bit strange that you're still here. He detests me. By now, even a glance at me should be unbearable for him." Lucas remained silent for a long time. I thought with his temperament, he would most likely mock or taunt me a few times, or argue that it was just a coincidence he had something to do at the hospital, or that the doctor insisted he stay here, and so on. But no, he didn't explain. The ward fell into silence, and for a long while, neither of us spoke. For us now, being able to stay peacefully in the same place without saying a word is truly rare. But such tranquility never lasts long. A moment later, We both spoke almost simultaneously. Lucas's voice was slightly cold, with a hint of awkwardness, planning to never go back. He was referring to that small rented room. After his mother passed away, Lucas bought that rented room and placed her ashes there. Perhaps his mother left a final wish, or maybe he simply missed that little place. Unfortunately, I spoke up at the same time, asking, "Can you withdraw your complaint against Attorney Song?" The faint warmth in Lucas's eyes vanished completely the moment my words fell. He stood up angrily, saying, "Do you really like those dirty things so much? First David Lincoln, now Herman." I genuinely didn't want Herman to lose his job because of me. As my father's lawyer, he essentially lost his standing in the industry after sending my dad to prison. Lucas can hate me all he wants, but Herman shouldn't have ended up like this. I hurriedly explained, "Herman has been helping me plan for many years. I was able to send David Lincoln to prison thanks to Attorney Song's years of staying by his side and gathering evidence." As the words left my mouth, I realized I had spoken too much in my haste. I shouldn't have revealed what I had done as well. I should have let Lucas keep hating me. With that hatred towards me, he wouldn't feel sad when I die. For a moment, I felt flustered, my mind racing to think of how to rephrase my words. Lucas, however, was the first to laugh. "Why don't you listen to what you just said?" While defending Herman, you still managed to clear your own name. It seems I don't need to struggle over how to take back the words I accidentally let slip. Lucas clearly didn't believe a single word of it. He despised my constant lies and couldn't bear to stay here a moment longer. He turned around abruptly and walked out of the hospital room without so much as a glance back at me. I watched his retreating figure, on the verge of disappearing from sight. Thinking of Mom, I anxiously spoke up, "Can you tell me where Mom's grave is?" For these past 7 years, Lucas has refused to contact me or see me. He wouldn't tell me anything about how Mom's funeral was arranged or where she was buried. I've tried every means to find out, but never succeeded. Now that I'm about to die, I just want to see her one last time, even if it's just a handful of ashes, a name or photo on a tombstone. Anything would do. Lucas paused at the hospital room door without even turning his head. After a long while, he only coldly said one sentence, "Ask me again after you've cut off all contact with David Lincoln and Herman." I was anxious to plead further, but he had already left. I wanted to get out of bed to chase after him, but found my legs wouldn't move again, since being diagnosed with ALS. There had been a few times when my legs suddenly became immobile, but those were only temporary. This time, however, I have a feeling that I may never walk normally again. I continued to stay in the hospital, confined to a wheelchair. After being examined and diagnosed by the doctor, it was confirmed that I had completely lost the ability to walk. After the new year, spring arrived. I could no longer use chopsticks and had to manage with a spoon to eat. I had to wear a child's bib to prevent food and soup from splashing all over my clothes. Swallowing things has become increasingly difficult, and even drinking water often makes me choke. I recalled again that ALS patient in the news whose oxygen tube was removed by their family. I don't think I can endure too much pain, so I figure there's no need to reach that point. I've started to gradually handle the affairs that need to be settled before death, while I still have some energy left. I went to visit David Lincoln in prison. After being imprisoned, he refused to accept it and tried every means to find someone to appeal. Unfortunately, the evidence was irrefutable, and the second trial upheld the original verdict, with no further appeals possible. The result of the second trial just came out a couple of days ago. I immediately went to the prison to tell him the good news as soon as possible. Unfortunately, he probably already knew and didn't seem surprised. However, when he saw me sitting in a wheelchair, he looked quite satisfied. I said to him, "What happens to me doesn't matter, as long as you can spend the rest of your life in prison. After all, if you leave prison, you'll only dirty my and my brother's eyes. If you're sentenced to death, you'll go underground and dirty our mother's eyes again. Better to stay here for the rest of your life." David Lincoln was so enraged his face twisted in fury. As I turned to leave, he roared furiously behind me, "No matter how much you do, so what? Does your mother or that dear brother of yours even trust you? They probably still see you as a selfish, ungrateful little bastard, don't they?" I turned around and calmly told him, "My brother already took me home long ago." David Lincoln was instantly furious, left speechless. After leaving the prison, the sunlight outside was brilliant. As the wind blew, I felt a slight chill on my face and only then realized I had shed tears. It turns out, I do feel a bit sad about Lucas hating me and no longer being willing to trust me. After my last visit to the prison, I asked Herman for help again. to push my wheelchair and accompany me to the school. My mentor, already in his 50s, crouched down in front of my wheelchair. A pair of somewhat aged hands cupped my face, whispering with a choked sob, "I was once her most accomplished student. I too had dreamed of dedicating my entire life to the lectern and laboratory, just like her." The mere thought of it used to set my blood boiling, and now I realize that dreams aren't achieved through effort alone. I can't bear to see her cry. Back when she was my teacher, she was so fierce. I wanted to wipe her tears, but my hands just wouldn't obey. All I could do was try to lighten the mood with a joke. "When I'm gone, you'll have to keep a close eye on my remains. Agreed to use it for research. Don't let the black market steal it." The fact proves that I simply lack a sense of humor. This joke failed to make her laugh through tears. Instead, it made her cry even more bitterly. I cast a pleading glance at Herman behind me. When I tilted my head to look at him, I saw him quickly turn away, avoiding my gaze. It seemed his eyes were also reddening. "Hey, I'm not dead yet." On the way back to the hospital, I used the excuse that my phone was out of battery to borrow Herman's phone. I opened his WeChat, accepted my own transfer, and then deleted the transaction record. The prepaid medical fees at the hospital were enough to last me over a month, which was more than sufficient for me, so, apart from setting aside a few hundred for pocket money, I transferred the rest to Herman. When ALS reaches its final stages, the feet can't walk, the hands can't move, the mouth can't speak, and even breathing becomes impossible. I don't really want to endure the agony of being a living corpse, so I won't wait for that day to come. After receiving the transfer, I put down Herman's phone. Tilting my head, I suddenly saw him shed tears. I couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. "Why are you crying again?" Herman didn't look at me, his face almost turning livid. "The wind outside is strong, it blew into my eyes." I teased him. "We didn't even open the car window, just like last time." When he said the same thing to me, I suddenly thought, this might be the last time we joke with each other. Thinking about it, all the matters that needed handling have been taken care of. There aren't many people or things left in my life that I need to worry about. I remembered what Lucas once told me: "When you really die, there's no need to inform me." Saying a final goodbye to him probably isn't necessary anymore. The coat pocket still holds the sleeping pills I've been saving up lately. As death approaches, my heart has gradually grown calm. It's just a pity I never got to find out where my mother's grave is. When I die, I wonder if I'll still be able to find her. Arrived at the hospital, Herman pushed my wheelchair and took me back to the ward. While waiting for the elevator, I casually spoke to him. "Don't stay here with me tonight. Your mother has been having headaches these past few days. You should go back and check on her more often. Don't act like I've sold you off or something." Herman walked behind me, ignoring me. I said sternly, "Even if you don't leave, I'll have the nurses kick you out." Herman suddenly leaned in close, reaching his hand toward my coat pocket. His tone was icy. "Xenia, do you really think I'm some kind of fool?" My mind went thud. Just as I was about to frantically stop him, a series of urgent shouts suddenly came from behind. "Make way! Make way!" Emergency patients being brought to the hospital are a daily occurrence. Nothing unusual. I was only focused on clutching the pocket of my coat, not even turning my head. Then suddenly, I heard Herman's voice, filled with disbelief. "Lucas." I turned around and saw the man lying on the gurney. His face, arms, and abdomen were all smeared with blood. The small patches of skin on his face and neck not covered in blood had lost all color. I could barely recognize him as Lucas anymore. It struck me like a bolt from the blue. I was desperate to rush over, but the wheelchair kept me rooted to the spot. "Brother." Herman suddenly snapped back to reality and immediately pushed my wheelchair, following the crowd of medical staff into the elevator. Lucas on the stretcher was clearly severely injured. He probably didn't even have the strength to utter a single word. His bloodshot eyes looked at me, yet he still managed to force out a cold snort. I glanced at his left hand, weakly hanging by the edge of the stretcher, fingertips still dripping blood onto the elevator floor. I desperately wanted to reach out and touch his hand, but didn't dare. Without even realizing it, my tears were falling uncontrollably. I felt an overwhelming fear, never having been so terrified before. When I spoke, my voice was barely more than a tremble. What's wrong with you?" Medical staff quickly stopped his bleeding. A doctor urgently asked me, "Are you the injured person's family member?" The injured drove himself to the hospital and collapsed as soon as he got out of the car at the entrance of the outpatient building. "If you're a family member, you can sign the emergency treatment form now." My mind went blank for a long moment. unable to comprehend what could have possibly happened to Lucas, given his personality. He shouldn't have reached the point of contemplating suicide, even if that were really the case. He wouldn't have driven himself to the hospital again. If someone else did it, David Lincoln is already in prison. Who else could hate him so much and go to such extremes? My heart ached unbearably, and I nodded anxiously. Yes, I'm his biological sister. Lucas was probably in severe pain, his entire body trembling, yet he still weakly murmured in protest, barely audible, "No, I don't have a sister." Ignoring his words, I anxiously asked the medical staff, "Does he need a blood transfusion?" "I can donate blood, any amount is fine. ALS is not contagious, especially since a physical examination is definitely required before donating blood. Both Lucas and I have rare blood types, making it difficult to have enough blood supply on short notice." Lucas still stubbornly refused with his words, "I don't want hers." His voice was too soft, almost inaudible to anyone. He was quickly wheeled into the emergency room after exiting the elevator. I signed the forms, only to be informed by the medical staff that close relatives are not suitable for blood donation. So, apart from signing, there was nothing else I could do. Approaching midnight, I signed a critical condition notice. I never thought that Lucas's critical condition notice would come even earlier than mine, despite me being the one with a terminal illness. The moment I signed my name, my hands trembled uncontrollably. Suddenly, I remembered many years ago, when Lucas signed my mother's critical condition notice and then called me. He must have felt the same overwhelming panic and helplessness as I do now. I had prepared enough medication and was ready to die that night. Yet, outside the emergency room, I waited for Lucas all night long. Fortunately, as dawn broke, the doctor informed me that he was out of danger. Then came 3 days in the intensive care unit, and only after those 3 days was he finally transferred to a regular ward. For several days in a row, I barely slept or rested, and my body simply couldn't take it anymore. Sitting by his hospital bed, holding his hand, I leaned against the edge and fell asleep. The sleep was heavy and muddled, and I had no idea how long it lasted. Holding his hand in mine, I could feel the warmth of his skin, which gave me an extraordinary sense of comfort. In my dazed state, I felt the hand in my palm being pulled away, and I suddenly jolted awake. When I opened my eyes, I happened to meet Lucas's gaze. He looked at me with a complicated expression. I couldn't decipher the emotions in it, but at the very least, I could tell it wasn't hatred. His eyes were slightly reddened as they met my gaze, and he didn't look away. We stared at each other in silence, and in that moment, all the past resentment seemed to suddenly dissipate. After a long while, I heard his voice, "Your drool is all over my hand." I snapped back to reality and awkwardly raised my hand to wipe it, only to suddenly realize he was talking nonsense. Lucas seemed to let out a soft chuckle. It wasn't a mocking laugh, but a genuine one, the kind I hadn't heard in many years. I looked at his injuries covering his body and face. Wrapped in so much bandages he resembled a mummy, yet he still managed to laugh. A mix of heartache and frustration surged within me. "What on earth happened to you?" Lucas responded indifferently. "Nothing, just a crazy woman." We hadn't been in touch for 7 years, so I wasn't very clear about the people around him. The only ones I knew were his adoptive mother and his current sister, Lily, but such injuries couldn't possibly have been caused by them. I remained silent for a long moment before asking, "Your girlfriend?" Yet his injuries, the knife wounds on his arm, were so deep the bone was visible. It didn't seem like a mere lover's quarrel at all. In fact, it looked more like some kind of blood feud. Lucas clearly didn't want to elaborate, replying coolly, "Mind your own business." He then mocked me again, addicted to faking illness and playing the victim, even resorting to a wheelchair now. I threw his words back at him, "Mind your own business." Lucas chuckled softly again. How strange. The tension between us seemed to suddenly ease. Lucas looked at me for a long moment before suddenly saying, "Do you want to come back with me?" What an abrupt statement. Yet I simply nodded and replied as lightly as a passing cloud, "Sure." It was as if there had never been those deeply unpleasant pasts between us, never those bone-deep resentments. It seems we are still that pair of inseparable siblings from many years ago. On such an afternoon, we talk as naturally as if discussing the weather. "Want to come back with me?" "Sure." Lucas stayed in the hospital for over half a month before taking me home with him upon discharge. On the day of discharge, my attending doctor privately pulled me aside and said, "Your brother's condition allows him to be discharged, but how can you leave?" Lucas was waiting for me not far away. I whispered, "Staying longer won't change anything. I don't want to die in the hospital." I followed Lucas as we left. after completing the discharge procedures on the first floor of the hospital. He went to the underground parking lot to get the car while I waited for him outside the main entrance. I didn't wait long when suddenly I heard someone beside me call my name with a doubtful tone, Xenia. The voice sounded somewhat familiar. I turned my head and saw a gray-haired man, roughly in his 60s, walking toward me. My memory has been fading badly lately, and many people and events are gradually slipping from my mind. Staring at this face, it took me a long while to finally remember. He was Principal Tom from Lucas's middle school days. Come to think of it, I once made a years-long deal with him. I gave him money, and he, in turn, passed it on to Lucas through funding. I curled my lips into a smile and greeted him. It's you, long time no see. It's a pity that even my facial expressions have become much stiffer now. This smile probably looks really unattractive. Principal Tom sighed. I couldn't reach you all this time. Even after contacting Lawyer Song, I still couldn't arrange a meeting with you. As he spoke, he took out a bank card from his wallet and pressed it into my hand. This was given to me by your brother Lucas a few months ago. It contains a full 100 million. You also know that it wasn't me who funded him in the first place. Over the years, as he achieved success, he's already given me plenty of benefits. This card, the amount is too large. No matter what, I can't accept it. Before I could say anything, his phone rang, and he hurriedly answered the call before leaving. Just then, Lucas's car pulled up. He got out and helped me into the car. I sat in the passenger seat, glancing at him sideways, feeling happy for how he looks now. That teenage Lucas couldn't even bear to spend a few dollars on painkillers. Now he can effortlessly pull out a bank card with hundreds of millions on it. My brother has always been the best. Lucas turned on the car navigation and set the location to the villa area where he currently lived. I couldn't help but speak up. Can we go to the old place? He immediately understood and changed the address to the rented house we lived in during our youth. In the evening, Lucas personally cooked, rolling up his sleeves as if preparing to make a grand meal. I stood at the kitchen door and said, "Can we have porridge? Considering you've just recovered from a serious injury, I'll eat light with you for a couple of days." Lucas claimed he wasn't that delicate, but he still followed my suggestion, cooking a pot of soft, well-boiled porridge and stir-frying a few simple side dishes. Amid the rising aroma, he glanced at my leg and asked, "Were you really injured?" I explained seriously, "I went rock climbing with Herman the other day and accidentally took a fall. Not too bad, but the doctor said using a wheelchair for recovery would help me heal better." That name always seemed to irritate Lucas. His expression visibly cooled as he couldn't hide his displeasure, scoffing, "Serves you right." I ate my porridge with a spoon, afraid of staining my clothes in front of Lucas. I kept my head down and tried to bring my mouth as close to the bowl as possible. Lucas gave me several strange looks before finally losing his patience and saying, "Do you think this is cute?" As if afraid he hadn't made himself clear enough, he added with displeasure, "Your face is practically buried in the bowl. Are you 3 years old?" My nose suddenly felt a bit sore. Keeping my head down and avoiding his gaze, I muttered, "None of your business." Lucas frowned again and said, "Serve yourself some food." I replied, "I'm on a diet." Lucas grew even more irritated. "You're already as thin as a ghost, and you're still dieting. Are you trying to become immortal?" My throat felt tight, and I didn't respond anymore. After a while, Lucas picked up some food and placed it in the bowl beside me. My tears instantly fell. Fortunately, his phone rang just then, and I caught a glimpse of the name, Lily, on his screen. Clearly, it was an important call. He answered it and went straight to the bedroom to talk, as if afraid I might eavesdrop. Fortunately, he was on the phone and didn't see my tears fall. When he got up to go to the bedroom, I faintly heard Lily's tearful questioning from the other end. I didn't quite catch what was said, but I could still sense the grievance, probably because Lucas usually never stays out this late. Suddenly, I thought, I brought Lucas here, but his home now is no longer here. The phone call lasted a long time. I buried my head and finished a bowl of porridge. Unable to get up on my own, I sat quietly at the dining table, waiting. The dishes on the table, along with Lucas's bowl of porridge, gradually grew cold. It wasn't until over half an hour later that Lucas finally returned. Clearly, because of Lily, he'd also lost his appetite to eat with me. After barely picking at his food for a few bites, he claimed to be full, set down his chopsticks, and helped me to the bedroom. That phone call had made things awkward between us again. I knew he was probably in a hurry to leave, but I pretended to be clueless and stayed overnight. Just one last night. Just one last time. Stay with me. The next morning, Lucas left for work. Before leaving, He helped me freshen up and prepared breakfast for me. None of us mentioned whether he would come here again tonight, yet we all knew in our hearts that he wouldn't. Last night he slept next door to me, and I could still hear him on the phone in the early hours. He sounded emotional, seemingly arguing with Lily. Probably, Lily found out about my relationship with Lucas and was worried I might take her brother away from her. I pushed the wheelchair, escorting Lucas out. In the rundown residential building, sunlight streamed in through the window at the end of the corridor. In the southern city during early March, the morning sunlight like this was already beginning to carry a hint of warmth. Lucas walked to the stairwell and was about to descend when he suddenly seemed to remember something. He turned back and crouched in front of my wheelchair. He asked me with some frustration. "I just remembered my secretary took the day off today. Do you know how to tie a tie? Could you help me with it?" I froze for a moment, then immediately reached out my hand. Unfortunately, I just couldn't muster any strength in my hands. After struggling for what felt like ages, cold sweat was already breaking out on my back. A Windsor knot, still tied loosely and sloppily. Lucas scoffed. "Did you skip breakfast or something?" I sighed helplessly. "My breakfast is still on the table. I really haven't eaten yet." Lucas looked at me with that somewhat strange expression again, as if he didn't quite recognize me. After a long while, he finally spoke. "Once you've recovered, go back to working at the school. You resigned just because I told you to. Was it so hard to say something nice to me?" I froze for a moment, then couldn't help but laugh. "Okay." Lucas awkwardly averted his gaze and added, "Mom's birthday is at the end of the month. I'll tell you where the cemetery is then, and we'll go together. I can't wait until that day." I tried acting a little coquettish. "Can't you tell me now, please? I really want to know. That way, maybe I could see Mom after I die." Unfortunately, the 23-year-old Xenia is clearly not the teenage girl she once was, and her coquettish act isn't very effective. Lucas remained unmoved, standing up as he said, "No." I let out a soft sigh, knowing his temperament. It was impossible for him to tell me in advance. Lucas turned to leave. I glanced at the suit jacket draped over his arm and couldn't help but remind him, even if the temperature rises, you should still keep warm. It's better to wear more. Lucas casually threw the jacket over his shoulders without turning back, saying, "Got it," I whispered, "and so it will be in the future." The voice was too soft. He didn't hear it again. For the last time, I watched him go downstairs and leave, his figure disappearing at the end of the hallway. I pushed the wheelchair and returned to the living room. Lucas said he found a caregiver for me, who should arrive around noon. See, he really doesn't plan to come anymore. That's why he's in such a hurry to hand me over to someone else. I went to the coat rack in the living room to get my overcoat. The pills were in its pocket, but the overcoat that was hanging there had disappeared. I searched all around. My head was terribly dizzy. Even though the rental room was small, I couldn't find it. My memory is too poor, and I can't recall where else I might have put the clothes. In the end, all I found was a fruit knife on the dining table. Beside it lay a plate of freshly cut fruit prepared by Lucas. I took the fruit knife and returned to my bedroom. Back when the three of us lived here together, this bedroom's bed was shared by my mother and me. So, after my mother's death, could a fragment of her soul still linger in this bed? I couldn't find her grave, nor even her ashes. I truly didn't know any other way to be closer to her when I passed. I lay down on the bed, the fruit knife pressing clumsily against my wrist. My phone seemed to be ringing endlessly. I couldn't tell whether it was reality or illusion. Amidst the scent of blood and my blurred vision, I saw my mother's face. She reached out and gently touched my head. Still with that same tender and compassionate voice, "My Xenia, you've suffered so much." I tightly held her hand and followed her as she left. At the edge of consciousness, it seemed like I heard the front door being violently pushed open. Lucas's voice, as if torn apart. "Xenia," such a clear sound, such a vivid illusion. "I know it won't be true. He won't come back." As he said, "When you're really dead, don't notify me again, brother." "As you wish. Then in this lifetime, let's say goodbye for now." Extra Lucas. My Xenia is dead. The last time she spoke to me was outside that old rented house. She was already in a wheelchair by then, needing a spoon to eat. She tried to tie my tie for me, but couldn't even manage to finish a proper knot. The last thing she said to me was, "Even if it gets warmer, you should still dress warmly. It's better to wear more." So many signs, such an obvious farewell, yet I failed to notice. How could I have missed it? I went downstairs and was about to get into the car when I suddenly tripped and fell on flat ground. My heart was pounding unusually hard. as if it was about to leap out of my throat. It felt like an invisible force had yanked me violently. Some playful children ran past me, pointing and laughing at me, a grown man, yet he fell to the ground in such a pitiful and ridiculous manner. It was impossible not to laugh. I got up and pulled open the car door to get in. Suddenly, I thought, today is really strange. When I get back from work, should I share this as a joke with Xenia? I wonder if she would laugh if she heard this. It seems like it's been a long time since I last heard her laugh genuinely, yet in my memories, many years ago, she was the little girl who laughed the most, so much so that later, when she was 12, she suddenly went with her father. The house felt empty without laughter, and neither Mom nor I could get used to it. Suddenly, it struck me, when I get home from work, I must do something to make her laugh. I hope she and I won't feel so distant anymore. I wish she could stay by my side, just like before, just like I specifically told her. I found her a caregiver, just to subtly let her know that I'm prepared to take care of her all the time. She doesn't have to worry about life inconveniences because of her leg injury, even when I'm at work. The caregiver will take care of her for me. I was driving to the office. Waiting at a red light, I glanced at the paper bag on the passenger seat, the one I had hastily brought into the car. Inside was Xenia's coat. A few days ago, while Xenia was taking care of me in the hospital, the coat got stained with my blood. She only cared to ask if I was in pain or still feeling unwell. Her clothes were dirty, but she didn't even remember to change them. I had my assistant buy her a new set, delivered early in the morning and hung on the coat rack. Now, even the simple act of personally giving her a piece of clothing feels awkward, but it's just hanging there. She'll probably understand when she sees it, right? I casually took the old one with me in the car, thinking I'd drop it off at the dry cleaner on the way. If I throw it away, I wonder if she'll get angry. The red light seems to last longer than usual today. Feeling momentarily bored, I reached out and took her coat from the paper bag. The pocket seemed slightly bulging, as if something was inside. What could it be? Just as I reached into the pocket, the traffic light turned green, the car behind honked, and I hastily put down the clothes to drive, but the items in my pocket slipped onto the floor mat. It turned out to be a vitamin C bottle and a bank card. The black card looked somewhat familiar, like a thorn abruptly piercing my mind. The car drove through the intersection. My foot suddenly jerked, and with a bang, I rear-ended the car in front. Traffic quickly descended into chaos, with someone frantically knocking on my window. Amid the endless noise, my mind suddenly went blank. In a daze, I leaned over and picked up that card and the medicine bottle. On the back of the card, my signature was still there. It was the one I had given to Principal Tom, yet now, it was lying in Xenia's clothes pocket. A sinister face seemed to materialize in the air, grinning menacingly at me. A terrifying truth suddenly began to surface in my mind, piece by piece. What if Principal Tom were to give this bank card to Xenia? What if, to this day, the two of them still knew each other? If the car window was being pounded with increasing intensity, and my vision kept fading in and out. Many years ago, fragments of memories suddenly surged violently into my mind. When Xenia was young, she introduced me to her friends. My brother is the smartest, yet also the dullest person. What Principal Tom said to me when I graduated from middle school: your sister is the most well-behaved and sensible. The scene shifts abruptly. Outside the rented apartment in the early morning, Xenia said with a coquettish smile, "Can't you just tell me where Mom's grave is now, please?" Invisible vines tightened around my throat, constricting relentlessly, gasping for breath, my hands trembling. I twisted open the vitamin C bottle. The white pills spilled out in a cascade. They were the sleep aids I'd just been prescribed 2 days prior. The doctor had specifically warned me, half a pill per dose was sufficient, and overdosing was absolutely forbidden. The pills scattered across the floor like a raging flood of wild beasts surging toward me. I was wrong. I was mistaken. Everything was wrong. After retrieving Xenia's ashes, I was unconscious at home and was taken to the hospital by my assistant, where I was diagnosed with severe depression and neurasthenia. When the doctor was explaining the precautions to me, I asked him, if I don't follow the doctor's orders, how long will it take to die? The doctor's expression immediately turned extremely serious. "Mr. Lin, I recommend that you be hospitalized for 24-hour treatment starting immediately." I did not accept his suggestion. I left the hospital and returned to that rented apartment. On the way home, I ran into Herman. He handed me a file folder, his voice pained and sarcastic. "Xenia said before she died that she hoped you would never know anything. That way, when she's gone, you'll feel better. but I can't bear to see you being deceived by her. I took the file folder and stumbled home in a daze. The documents inside spilled all over the desk, along with several USB drives containing the audio and video recordings. They hold the entire truth. Each one feels like a slow execution inflicted upon me. Xenia's collaboration with Herman over the years. The step-by-step plan to send David Lincoln to prison, and all the evidence collected, Xenia's transfer records, call logs, and chat records with Principal Tom. On the day David Lincoln was sentenced to life imprisonment in the first trial, Xenia walked out of the court joyfully. Captured on camera, she said, "I can go find my brother now." At 23, Xenia seemed to instantly revert to her teenage self, as the pages of the document turned one by one. Further down lay her diagnosis report for ALS. So, she used a wheelchair not because of a rock-climbing injury. So, she ate porridge with a spoon not on a whim, not because she simply wanted porridge. So, this was our first meeting after 7 years. I was thinking about how to vent my hatred, how to spend the long years ahead watching her admit her mistakes and repent. Little did I know, she was already waiting for death. Herman said, "Actually, the body donation form can still take effect even without a family member's signature. She came to find you, probably just because she got scared when she suddenly fell ill. Maybe that day, she was trying to reach out to you for help, but you told her that even if she really died, not to inform you again. Perhaps she also thought of telling you something else, but in the end, she didn't say it. Maybe that day, she was trying to reach out to you for help, calling for your help. Add one more thing, if she really dies, there's no need to inform me again." That was the response she received. But in truth, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at all. I don't know. In the endless, deathly silent and cold night, I covered my face and wept bitterly. That day, I just didn't expect it. Such an exaggerated thing as a body donation form. Could it be real? I just hated Xenia for 7 whole years, never coming to see me, never lighting a single stick of incense for Mom. But I forgot. It was me who told her 7 years ago that I never wanted to see her again. From then on, I didn't know. On the night Mom passed away, Xenia only learned that David Lincoln planned to take advantage of the liveliness on the cruise ship that night to discuss a major illegal deal. For this, she and Herman made extensive preparations. As long as nothing went wrong that night, they would have enough evidence to send David Lincoln to prison. That's why she hesitated on the phone, saying she could only come to her mother's place the next day. But after hanging up the phone, she still chose to give up and rushed back to the country overnight. She moved at the fastest speed possible, but due to the long distance and flight delays, it was already noon the next day by the time she arrived at the hospital. But I didn't care where she had come from. In the midst of overwhelming grief and loss of control, I lashed out at her with hatred, saying, "Never let me see you again. I just hate that she abandoned me and Mom. I just, truly never expected it." She had a terminal illness and was about to die. The last time, Xenia asked me where Mom's grave was. She wanted to know sooner, but I insisted on waiting until Mom's birthday to tell her, only because Mom left a final wish before she passed, asking for nothing else, just that on her future birthdays, if Xenia is willing, we siblings could visit her grave together to see her once. That alone would be enough, but for 7 years, not even once have I been able to fulfill her wish. Now I finally see Xenia again. I'm so afraid of disappointing Mom again. I'm afraid Xenia might have found out about Mom's grave too soon. Perhaps she won't go on Mom's birthday. I'm always like this, thinking the worst of her, always feeling that maybe one day, she'll selfishly and cruelly abandon me and Mom again, not realizing that the selfish and cruel one was never her. Little did I know, in the places I couldn't see, my Xenia, how much she had endured alone, how much injustice she had suffered. But it was too late, far too late. The night before Xenia passed away, she saw Lily calling me. I know there must be many misunderstandings about Lily and that so-called foster mother of mine. She doesn't know that Lily is Lucy's daughter, David Lincoln's illegitimate child. That night, after Lucy died, Lily called me several times, hurling curses and accusations before she emotionally collapsed, fell from a high building, and died on the spot. And Lucy was the woman who once made David Lincoln betray my mother. After my mother's death, Lucy, who had been abandoned by David Lincoln, came to me. She said she pitied me and wanted to adopt me, promising to take good care of me in the future, but in reality, she was just fantasizing about using me to return to David Lincoln's side and regain her former life of luxury. I didn't mind accepting a pawn that had been delivered to my doorstep. I played along with their scheme and, through Lucy, gathered a lot of incriminating evidence against David Lincoln. Among this evidence were also some crimes involving Lucy, such as her drug use and her assistance in David Lincoln's financial crimes. After years of effort, I finally submitted all the sufficient evidence to the court. At the same time, another person, unexpectedly, stepped forward. David Lincoln's lawyer, Herman, also submitted evidence accusing him of his crimes. All of this combined led to David Lincoln being directly sentenced to life imprisonment. I only thought that Herman, seeing David Lincoln's crimes exposed, was kicking him while he was down to save himself. But I never knew that he, together with Xenia, had been striving for the same goal as me for many years. All these years, my Xenia and I chose different paths, yet ended up on the same road. We carried the same hatred, longing for the same end. We could have reunited at the finish line, but no more. Never again will there be a reunion, never again. David Lincoln was imprisoned, and the second trial upheld the original verdict. Lucy's beautiful dream was completely shattered. Even someone as foolish as her finally began to see through my true intentions. I handed over Lucy's criminal evidence from these years to the police. Lucy went completely insane, jumping out of the window to escape during the arrest and came to my house. Coincidentally, that night I found out Xenia had visited David Lincoln in prison again. Heartbroken and furious, I drank myself into a stupor. While I was unconscious, Lucy broke in and severely injured me with a machete. I was completely weak from the alcohol. At the last moment, I managed to knock Lucy unconscious with a vase before stumbling to drive myself to the hospital. In the hospital, I saw Xenia's face filled with panic and grief. After 7 years, I heard her cry out in tears, calling me, brother, like a gentle knife. It plunged deep into my heart. At that moment, I suddenly thought, no matter how much resentment I had toward Xenia before, from now on, I could forgive her. Having walked through the brink of life and death, I suddenly no longer wished to lose her. Now we only have each other left. We are each other's only family. Suddenly it occurred to me, from now on, I don't want to leave Xenia anymore. I don't want to be apart from her again. The enemy has been brought to justice, and mother has passed away. I don't want to hate anymore. I want to take Xenia home. I miss Xenia. I miss the home we once had, but she's dead. My Xenia, she's dead. Together we strangled the one we hated, yet together, we lost our beloved forever. Next to my mother's grave, I bought 2 more plots, one to bury Xenia, the other reserved for myself. I wonder if there's an afterlife. Will those buried together in death meet again in the next life? In the bright April sun of the southern city, the cemetery stood empty. I sat before Xenia's tombstone, raising a beer can and gently clinking it against her grave. Mom never allowed Xenia to drink when she was alive. I wonder if she'd be angry seeing this now. A can of beer was emptied. I opened another can and took out the vitamin C that Xenia had previously hidden in her coat pocket. In a daze, it seemed like I saw Xenia knocking on my head again. She scolded me sternly, taking medicine with beer. Are you out of your mind? Wait till Mom sees this. Let's see if she doesn't break one of your legs. That angry face seemed to appear before me again. I smiled as I looked at Xenia's tombstone. When I spoke, my tone was probably annoyingly defiant. A can of beer effortlessly washed down a bottle of vitamin C, nor did I see Mom rush out to break my legs again. I rested my head against the tombstone and slowly closed my eyes. As consciousness faded, I whispered softly, it's not dark yet, don't forget to wait for me for dinner. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.